Hi, I'm John Hood. I'm the author of a series of historical fantasy novels called The Folklore Cycle. The first two books of the series, Mountain Folk and Forest Folk, came out in 2021 and 2022. The next book of the series is called Water Folk, and it's about to be published. This is the eighth in a series of videos we've prepared to give you an advanced look at the world of water folk. My stories are much like other fantasy tales you've read, watched, or heard in the past. They feature bold heroes, terrifying monsters, magical creatures, epic quests, and strange sorcery. Two things set my stories apart, though. First, they take place not in some imaginary world, but in early America. They depict real-life events, such as the American Revolution, the abolitionist movement, and the fall of the Alamo. And they feature real-life people such as George Washington, Daniel Boone, Davy Crockett, and Sojourner Truth. That's what makes them historical fantasies. A little bit from column A, a little bit from column B. Here's the other distinctive thing about the stories I write. Writers are themselves part of the story. That's why I'm speaking to you today from the Edgar Allen Poe Museum in Richmond, Virginia. It houses the world's largest collection of Poe manuscripts and memorabilia. It opened in 1922 as the Edgar Allen Poe Shrine and gradually expanded into the historic structures around it. The famous author never actually lived here in the old stone house, the oldest residence in Richmond. But this place and Poe's life are deeply intertwined. The stone benches in this garden, for example, came from the boarding house where Poe was married. One of the staircases in the museum actually came from Poe's childhood home. And even the ivy in the garden right there behind me was actually transplanted from the gravesite of Poe's mother. Also, that original Poe shrine was built from bricks salvaged from the old Richmond office of the Southern Literary Messenger. Poe had edited that magazine and published some of his early works in its pages. What does all this have to do with my new book, Water Folk? Well, not only is Edgar Allan Poe one of my characters, but his novel, The Narrative of Arthur Gordon Pym, plays a role in the plot of the story. That story was originally published in, you guessed it, the Southern Literary Messenger. Poe is far from the only writer who appears in the folklore cycle. Herman Melville, for example, shows up in Water Folk, though if I told you anything more about that, it would kind of ruin the surprise. And Washington Irving was a character in my second book, Forest Folk. In other cases, it isn't the author who appears in my story, it's the author's most famous work. One scene in Mountain Folk shows Daniel Boone reading his favorite book, Gulliver's Travels by Jonathan Swift. In Forest Folk, a fairy hero is inspired to profess his love by a poetic line from Edmund Spenser's The Faerie Queene. In Water Folk, poetic lines from the Iliad inspire a human, Sam Houston, to perform heroic deeds of his own. The real-life Sam Houston truly loved Homer's epic poem. He could recite long stretches of the Iliad from memory. Many of his Cherokee friends didn't understand the words, but they marveled at Houston's dramatic flair. By the way, among the Cherokees, Houston was known as Coline, meaning the raven. When you hear that name, what American author springs to mind? Edgar Allan Poe, of course. In Water Folk, I bring Poe and Sam Houston together for a memorable meeting. In future videos, I'll show you even more of the fantastical world of Water Folk. You can always go learn more for yourself by visiting the website for the series, that's folklorecycle.com. While there, you can read reviews, you can learn about the characters and settings, and of course you can order Water Folk and its preceding books as paperbacks, as ebooks, or as audiobooks. See you soon!